Hello and welcome back to another edition of the LA Times College Football Roundtable. My name is Ryan Kartje. I'm your USC beat writer and host. Joined today by Ben Bolch, once again, UCLA beat writer with the LA Times. Ben, how you doing? Coming off a late kickoff.
Yeah, I'm still good at catching up on sleep. I actually had something to do early Sunday morning, so I am still recovering from I think I got out of the press box at roughly 1 a.m. Sunday morning. So still recovering from that.
UCLA also still recovering from that loss to Oregon. But let's start with USC. A very strange game, I would say. USC comes out of the gate against Wisconsin, looks really bad and sloppy in the first half. I had this whole story written about how, these are the mistakes they can't make when they're trying to mount a playoff run, especially after a loss at Michigan. And then what do they do in the second half? They come out and just look like world beaters, completely shut out Wisconsin. The defense looks great. Miller Moss looks great, leads three touchdown drives in a row in the third and fourth quarter. And suddenly USC looks again like a potential playoff team. Ben, I don't know what takeaways do you have kind of watching what you did at the
Well,
USC game?
I want to thank USC for ruining. I'm being facetious when I say that, for ruining my pregame nap because I was completely planning on that game not being interesting at all, and then the Trojans go out and commit three turnovers in the first half. And I was like, wow, they're gonna, this is shaping up. They're probably gonna lose this game. But it was interesting because I felt like even though they had the three turnovers, I think the yardage they were still dominating in the first half, right? And you could tell they were the better team, and if they could get their act together, they were gonna win that game. But I think the big takeaway there is you just can't have that many mistakes in any game and expect to be like a playoff caliber team, right? So if they can't get that kind of stuff shored up, they're going to lose a game or two that they are not, expected to lose, or certainly against a team like Penn State or, down the road if they get to the Big Ten championship game. You just can't play like that. So I think that they got to play smart, disciplined football. And I didn't, the second half they recovered and did a good job, but on the whole, you just can't have that kind of performance.
I think Miller Moss came out with the right attitude about this, and that was just, that was unacceptable the way we started. Um, against good teams, kind of like you said, uh, they'll make us pay for this. Wisconsin is not a very good team, so I think they were kind of fortunate that a performance like this came against them. But it was kind of the same problem against Michigan. Tough first half leading into a much better second half. The one thing I think you walk out of this game thinking, feeling very good about if you're USC especially, maybe not the one thing, but the main thing is these second half adjustments by Dan Lin. And Ben, I think you can comment on this, specifically from your experience last year covering Dan as the defensive coordinator at UCLA. This man just knows what he's doing at halftime. I mean, I looked up the stats last night for the latest this morning edition of the newsletter, and he has five shutouts in the second half over 17 games. 10 of those 17 games, his defense only allowed 7 points or less in the second half, and never has his defense allowed more than 14 points. That happened only one time against Arizona State last year with UCLA. So he's basically got a perfect record in the second half of just like at least maintaining. He's never looked worse in the second half than he has from the first. And that's kind of an amazing accomplishment when you consider that there is also an offensive coordinator making the same adjustments on the other side of the ball. So I came away just, continuing to be impressed by Danton Lynn and what he's been able to do. And I do think, this team has sort of matched his resilience in that regard. And if they can keep that up, this is a team that can go a long way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, they have the pretty much a complete package there. And I didn't, it's interesting you said I didn't really remember the splits on UCLA defense first half, second half with Danton Lamb, but I just know that he always was very prepared. And even beyond, having the talent he did at UCLA last year with Leatu Latu and some of the other edge rushers, he always found a way to get things done and exploit the weakness in whatever the offense had. So I've seen that kind of carry over. Yes, there have been some shaky moments, particularly in the first half for SC in some of these games. But to your point, I think that they have to really like where this defense is headed, led by Dan Lin.
I think I'd seen a stat yesterday, just I forget who it was, talking about the Danton Lynn effect and how that's also affected UCLA. The second halves for UCLA have not gone well. And that certainly was the case again against Oregon. Uh, Ben, just I know we ask you the same question every week, what went wrong, but where did things start to go awry in this game?
Well, pretty much from the opening kickoff, and it was kind of interesting dynamic though. I mean, Oregon was up 28-3, and it looked like just a complete blowout. And then they kind of, it was really curious. They were driving down for what looked like another sure touchdown, and it was a really bizarre play because Dylan Gabriel was rolling out. He had a receiver. The receiver fell down, but I don't think that really impacted the play. Dylan Gabriel just threw a terrible pass that Brian Addison stepped in front of. Grabbed it and ran 96 yards for a pick six. And even though it didn't change the outcome of the game, it really did kind of change the complexion of the game. Because I think if Oregon scores on that drive, they end up winning this game like 60-3. But to UCLA's credit, they did kind of hold Oregon down for a little while. Oregon looked like they were kind of on cruise control at that point, never really in danger of losing the game, but certainly made the score a lot more respectable. But the story of the day for me, UCLA's offense, no touchdowns in this game. Just a couple more, field goals, and that Brian Addison pick six was pretty much all they could muster on the scoreboard. And then the big question going forward, Ethan Garber's status. He left the game with 9 minutes left with what looked like a possible concussion. He took a big hit in the end zone, got up, was holding the back of his head for a moment, and people were wondering, like, hey, what's happening here? DeShaun Foster actually had a curious quote after that when I asked him about it, was he in the concussion protocol? And let me actually pull this up here because I don't want to misquote this, and it was so just odd. He said, I would assume he was crying or sad about the situation, which he must have,
Bizarre.
he just must have not understood what I was asking because I said he was holding the back of his head. Is he in the concussion protocol? And I don't know what he thought I asked, but that was what he said to that. So, UCLA has a Monday evening practice. That'll be the first thing I'll do is glance over the quarterbacks, see if Ethan Garbers is over there and what he looks like. Because, Justin Martin has a lot of talent, but I think he's a good ways behind Ethan Garbers in experience and ability to lead this team right now. So that'll be the number one thing I'll be looking for this week.
Needless to say, this is not the first bizarre DeShaun Foster moment. And it just seems like week after week, we're given reminders of a coach who seems so far in over his head.
DeShaun did some things that his predecessor did not. I mean, let's be honest. He engaged the fans. He, had that spring showcase. It was a huge success. He kind of salvaged the recruiting class of 2025. And, for a while, he showed some energy and was like engaging in a way that his predecessor was not. Now, in retrospect, I think it's important for us to kind of look at that and say, well, these were all things that any good coach would do anyway, but Chip Kelly didn't do them. So I think DeShaun Foster got some credit for doing just kind of baseline head coaching things that, maybe he got extra bonus points for that he probably shouldn't have. And now, we're seeing he's getting very defensive. He's kind of become very thin-skinned when things are not going well. So he's gotta show that he can kind of be pulling his big boy pants to quote Kobe Bryant, and just man up when things get tough. Because right now, it's certainly looking like he's going to have to do a lot of that the rest of the season.
And he's going to have to do that this week against Penn State on the road. Not exactly a soft landing spot.
Yeah, 27.5 point underdogs. I think that's their biggest dog line since I think there were 31 points underdogs on the road at Oklahoma in 2018, which was Chip Kelly's first year. Just speaks to the spot that this team is in right now. I mean, I don't expect them to win that game or really even make it close. I'm actually looking ahead to the next game against Minnesota on October 12th at the Rose Bowl, because I think that is going to be kind of the game that tells the tale of this season for UCLA. Do they have the resolve and the fortitude to keep fighting when things are not looking good and, could really snowball into a tailspin for them? That's a game they can't have any moral victories. They have to win that game. And then maybe, they can catch a little bit of momentum there and kind of, win a couple of games. I mean, I'm looking at that schedule. It's tough though. I mean, at Nebraska, at Rutgers, Iowa at home. Iowa's pretty good. Not a lot of games that I mean, literally, I think the only game they're favored in the rest of the season right now is Fresno State at home at the Rose Bowl, but that game's after the SC game, and you got to imagine if they get beaten down by the Trojans, what's their motivation at that point, especially if they're 1-10. So they just got to show some resolve here.
Very bleak in Westwood these days. Meanwhile, USC takes on Minnesota on the road this week. This feels like a game that they should, comfortably win, leading into, a top 10 matchup against Penn State at the Coliseum. But sort of rings of a trap game for sure with the big game coming the next week. So I think it'll be really critical, especially offensively, that they get off to a smooth start. And I think the one thing that is the biggest concern going forward, the offensive line is just not found its stride yet. Even it was better against Wisconsin for sure. They weren't facing a front like Michigan's, but still, Elijah Page, the young left tackle, gives up four more pressures. He's given up the second most pressures of any offensive lineman in the Big Ten. It's just not good enough when you're talking about a team like Penn State coming into the Coliseum with just another fearsome pass rush. Abdul Carter coming off the edge, not someone Miller Moss is going to want to see. So, I think that Penn State game is really shaping up to be maybe the biggest of the season in terms of determining where USC stands in the Big Ten, where it might stand in the playoff picture. But they got to take care of business at Minnesota first. And, just a weird road game, like middling Big Ten team. I could see things getting a little screwy, but I think USC is in good spot to take care of business.
I think I see two things working in USC's favor this week. Number one, you're not going when it's bitterly cold, right? So you get to go to Minnesota when it's still beautiful fall weather. Yes, no snow delays. And then number two, I think Minnesota did USC a favor by playing so well in the second half against Michigan, because now the coaches can show that tape to their players and say, hey, look, guys, these guys almost beat Michigan, a team that we just lost to. And, some could say they probably would have if they had gotten that onside kick that they seemed to recover. So, you can't take them lightly. And I think the fact that Minnesota fought so hard and played so well in the second half of that game actually is going to do USC a favor on Saturday.
I'm excited for my first trip ever to Minneapolis, but I am jealous of you going to Happy Valley, still my favorite stadium to watch a college football game in the Big Ten. So an awesome, awesome venue.
I'm staying in Altoona because the hotel prices in State College are 1,100 and up for anything in the Marriott chain. So I'm staying in Altoona. I think it's roughly 30, 40 minutes away. I think Altoona got a shout out in Groundhog Day. I think Bill Murray said the weather was going to head off to Altoona. So I'm eager to see that. I got to look on a map and see how close it is to Punxsutawney to do another Groundhog reference. But I'm excited. I've never been to Penn State. So this is one to check off the bucket list, especially 2 weeks after going to Tiger Stadium. So you got two of the top five college football environments in a row. And then I had the Rose Bowl in between. So that's 3 out of 5 in a 3-week span. So as far as environments, it doesn't get much better than this. So I'm pretty excited.
Great venues, maybe not so great at games with UCLA involved.
We'll take our wins where we can.
We'll see how things go for Ben in State College and me in Minneapolis. We'll catch up with you again next Monday. Thanks for joining us.